I'm Lauren Kling, and this is 5 Things That Changed Your Life. Each episode, I sit down with a special guest and ask them to share 5 stories, events, or experiences that had an impact on their life, like a person who helped them decide a path to take, or a place that completely transformed the way they think. Perhaps it was inspiration from a family road trip or a childhood TV show that helped them to make the person they are today. This week's guest, HEIDI ROSE ROBBINS, talks about the first time she took a class from a very special yoga teacher.
She started crying in the most fierce, gorgeous way, and she said, "I will gladly eat your troubles." And we all just simultaneously, like 25 women went, and it was just this great release and relief and surrender to that kind of compassion and that kind of sensitivity.
HEIDI is a poet, astrologer, teacher, and inspirational speaker. In 2013, HEIDI published her first book of poetry, This Beckoning Ceaseless Beauty. Today, HEIDI runs Radiant Life Retreats, a place for women to grow a capacity for love through the communal exploration of poetry, movement, and friendship. Joining me as always is my co-host Alan Ng, and this week's guest, HEIDI ROSE ROBBINS.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
It's awesome to be here.
You were highly recommended by our last season guest, Christine Aller.
Dear beloved friend who inspires me daily.
As many of us.
Yes.
Right. Now, how long have you known her? How far back does that go?
My gosh, I want to say at least 8 years. And I'm trying to even think how we first met. Oh, I know. It was through a dear friend who now lives in Germany. And she said, "You have to meet my high school friend, Christine Aller. You will love her." And she talked about her a long time before I met her. And I had this image of her and where she lived and everything. And then finally,
right,
we got together. And it was clear that we had gifts for one another. And we've been sort of trading ever since, and meeting with one another ever since, and sort of hopefully inspiring one another ever since. Certainly she's been inspiring me.
Yes. Yeah, same way. And I think it's been 7 or 8 years for myself as well.
Awesome.
And
yes.
She actually helped me get out of a job 6 years ago. Around this time was when I love it, because she literally said, "We're going to make an escape plan. You're either going to get fired in 3 months or you're going to quit in 3 months.
Okay.
And you're just going to have 2 options, get fired or quit.
That's awesome.
And don't worry about anything else." And so
she's got such a great no. Do you know, like she helped me say no a couple times when I really needed to say no. And it sounds like you really needed to quit. You really needed to end. And she's got that, which is, we're so nice. We always want to make but she somehow is like, no, you don't want this. You
right.
want this. Let's go in that direction.
Right.
So.
And I think the power of no is you come across, at least to yourself, I think, as stronger, that you're willing to say no. And it is more powerful for other people to see somebody who's confident in what they're willing to give their time and effort and energy to.
Absolutely. I've lately been calling it, and I'm sure I've stolen it from somebody, but I've lately been calling it the sacred no.
Yes.
Because it creates time, it creates space, it creates energy.
It does.
Yeah.
The first one you said, "When I declared I'm a poet with a map of the heavens in my pocket." What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. So that's awesome. That was actually, relatively recently. That was about 4 to 5 years ago. And I would say it was 4 years ago. And I had been writing poetry my whole life, but I've been making my living as an astrologer and teacher and counselor. And I was in this place. My life has been this weaving of artistry and spirituality my entire life. I mean, I was born with my dad as an astrologer, and we colored chakras at the kitchen table. I mean, I was steeped in spirituality. So there's been this weaving throughout. And it was a moment about 5 years ago when I said, the artist part of me is really hungry to step forward again, because she's stepped forward throughout my life at different moments, right? And I went to this workshop by Alexandra Franzen. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she's another just brilliant being in the world. And I was sitting there and we did a lot of writing. And I said, well, what if I didn't introduce myself as an astrologer? How would I introduce myself? I actually would like to say I'm a poet, because the way we name ourselves, I think, is really significant.
Right.
You know, like what do you do? And what do you do? Well, I'm a poet. What do you do? Well, I'm an astrologer. So I thought, I'm going to lead with poet for a while, because I was starting to perform more and write more. And so, but I didn't want to leave the astrology behind. So I just was leaning into a different name and being for myself. And it felt so good. And once I started saying that, I just found there were all kinds of new opportunities to share my work. And people are always were like, a poet and an astrologer, lucky you. Or they would laugh at me. I mean, sometimes people don't know what to do with it, but
right.
So
wait, were you leaving behind? Were you not saying astrologer, or were you kind of feeling like that was one of your children that you just could not leave behind on the family trip?
Well, believe it or not, in that moment, like, I was feeling astrology, and this sounds funny, but I was feeling astrology as my day job almost. Because I've been making my money as an astrologer for 15 years, and so I was almost at that moment going like, okay, I can do that. I know how to do that. But I didn't want to leave it behind. But that's why I put it in my pocket. That's why I put it in my back pocket.
Got it.
So I didn't want to say no, goodbye. But I wanted to see what it felt like to go, I'm a poet, with a map of the heavens in my pocket.
It's fascinating. Again, going back to Christine, in talking with her, trying to come up with brand, for people in entertainment, or a brand can be a brand of a product.
Yeah.
But I think a brand can be, how do I tell somebody my story in a word or a short phrase?
Exactly. And I think there's also something in me that it's such a journey to be an astrologer, because the first reaction and most people have is puzzling, or there's a wide variety, right? And, astrology for me is an incredibly grounded, beautiful tool that you can use to make your life work better. And it's not fortune telling, and it's not, crystal ball predictive, but it's this beautiful tool. So I come from it from a really grounded place, but the minute you name yourself something, people go, astrologer, beads hanging in the doorway, and when will I meet my new love, So I think there was also just part of me that was like, well, it would be so glorious to just say poet. Because, I guess that has its own ripple effect as well. But
well, it does. And when you think about the word poet, I feel like for some people, very few things come to mind.
Yeah.
Somebody thinks of, you write poetry that appears in the Reader's Digest,
right.
Or you write poetry that I'll have to read in grade school.
Right.
But there's poets who are musical artists, where a song is poetry.
Yeah. Yes. Both names are, I don't know, elusive, or the deepest meaning of them, or.
So is that a good thing then, that the word poetry and that whole thing is elusive and not really specific, or is it make it difficult? Do you feel like you have to explain yourself when you get blank stares?
I just laugh with people, or I say, wow, that it does sound like something that you don't hear every day, but I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing in the world. And most people are really curious. Right.
Right.
So, it's always both. It's always like, complicated, and sort of, I enjoy telling them a little bit more. And some people will go blank completely, and you're just like, well, we'll stop that conversation. And some people are hungry for it.
Right.
If you were to, right now I might even say to you, above all else, I feel like a teacher and a counselor and a cheerleader of people in their lives expressing their gifts. Maybe that's the umbrella over everything else.
Got it.
Yeah. But
all right. I like that.
Can you speak to the map of the heavens in your pocket?
Well, because I grew up with my father as an astrologer, that is like a second language to me. So really, it's almost like a foreign language that I have been steeped in since I was born. So my dad was always like talking to me about my high school friends. Oh, he's a Cancer. He's got, whatever. And so it's this language that was in my house. And then when I was 19, I started to study it. And then almost 20 years ago, I started to practice it as my part of my profession. So it feels like second nature to me. It feels like it's in my pocket, and I feel like I can access it at any time. And in that moment, I didn't necessarily have to lead with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
now, is astrology a predetermination of somebody's life? Meaning when they're born, when their soul comes into a body, that it's already been predetermined?
No. I mean, it is a beautiful, I would say, energetic map that meets your free will. So, in other words, it's not like you are destined to have this happen. And it also depends on your consciousness. What are you interested in about how the chart's going to manifest? So if you're a person that's like, I just want to have gobs of money, then it's going to manifest differently than someone that's a little more, wants a little more than that. Do you know what I mean?
I have been struggling with this whole idea going outside the realm of what most people are kind of, I just live my life. I just drive to work. I have fun with friends. I go to a bar. So for myself, the path of meditation and what astrology is and self-help and praying and Reiki, all of these things are new. But coming from parents who are accountants, that side of my brain is trying to decide, wait a minute, is it predetermined or is it not predetermined? It is a 0 or a 1. So then when you say, well, it's determined one way, but you can veer off another way, I'm like, no, that doesn't answer my question.
Well, it sounds like there's a level of profiling in the good sense of, why you do what you do and or the approach you take. You mentioned, I want to make lots of money, but it may seem like the approach you take to it depends on, your...
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, it is a definite map. Like it is where all the planets were in the heavens when you were born and your relationship to those. And it's a science of relationships and of cycles. So we look at definite cycles where I could say to you, oh my goodness, okay, you're in the middle of this particular 12-year cycle. And I can be very specific about those things. But how you choose to work with the cycle is up to you. How you choose to work with a particular planetary placement is up to you. So what is your sign?
Leo, August 20th.
Okay. So, Leo is a beautiful sign. It's like, but the question with Leo is, it's this journey about who am I and what do I have to express and how am I going to express it through what medium? And, on one hand, Leos are the artists and they're the leaders, right? But as an example, in our very political atmosphere, like Donald Trump is a Leo rising. We won't get into rising signs, but he's got very strong Leo. So there's this journey of the ego. Like, are we interested in purely ourselves and being the leader, or are we leading beneficently? Are we doing what we do as an offering to the group and not just for attention, not just for the spotlight?
Got it.
Yeah.
So are you saying then that trait is not shared amongst the other signs?
That is specific to you, that it's a fiery, it rules the leadership, the heart, the sun. So that is specific to that sign. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a whole nother conversation we could have.
I know. And it's discovery. It's still understanding and that accountant brain fighting.
Yes.
Fighting
I love it. That's a good fight to have.
So thank you. The next thing we're going to get into is, you had an audition at age 11 in Fargo, North Dakota, where you said, facing fear, discovering true devotion and passion, my first experience of artistic community.
Yeah. Well, Fargo, North Dakota, you don't immediately think artistic community, but, what happened was I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. It was actually a great place to grow up till I was 13 years old. And when I was 11, my mother found out about an audition, and these people had come to town and they had found this park called Trollwood Park that they were going to use for summer camp, really, or for summer shows. And it was only going to be for high school students. But their first show was Wizard of Oz. So they needed munchkins. So they couldn't have short high school students, so they decided to open it up for the munchkins. So my mom found out about this, and I was loving theater. My dad was an opera director. My dad was an astrologer and opera director. Okay, so he was an opera director, and I grew up in the theater, so I was like, oh, I want to do this. I love this, and heard about this audition, memorized the mayor of the Munchkin City, as mayor of the Munchkin City in the county of the land of Oz, right? Memorized that. And I remember waiting out in the hall for this audition and walking onto the stage and, being blinded, seeing 3 people in the front and being terrified, busting through it anyway at the, how do you do that at the age of 11? You just whatever, you just push through. And then I remember leaning in and seeing their faces, and they said, would you sing something? And I wasn't a big singer, and that terrified me the most of all. And I said, I don't have anything to sing. I don't have anything to sing. I just panicked. And they said, oh, just sing Happy Birthday. And I remember the pain of singing it. I was singing it, and I was like, this sounds horrible, but I'm just going to keep doing my best, know? And I walked off stage, and they said, thank you. They're very sweet. I walked off stage, and I think I might have even burst into tears because it required so much to do that. But then I went on to have the 3 most glorious summers of my childhood with these fabulous 70s hippies that were transforming the world with their artistic vision, Wow. Certainly transforming Fargo, North Dakota with their artistic vision.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But so at that time you were already studying astrology?
No. I mean, my dad was. Okay. I was around it, but I wasn't studying it. I knew it like my ABCs. I knew the signs and such.
Were you in the background those 3 summers, or did you eventually get to the foreground?
No, I started out as a munchkin. The next year I was Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, flying through the trees. And the next year I was, I was in Huckleberry Finn, and it was the kind of place where there was a river on the property, and Huck Finn came down a raft on the river. I mean, they were brilliant people. I really did feel like I was in the presence of just, hungry visionaries that were saying, let's take these kids and, create the most amazing experience, which we did.
That's amazing. Do you find yourself having a preference between playing somebody else or being yourself?
Yeah, well, this is a gorgeous question for a Leo. and I am a Leo rising, actually. So this is a gorgeous question because what I did find as I acted for many years, but I eventually felt like I have a much better time performing as myself. So I loved acting. I loved the presence, I loved the shining, I loved the radiance, I loved the community, I loved the spirit of collaboration. But eventually I was like, and this was after graduate school, I went to graduate school for acting. I eventually was like, I think I just like being me confidently and sharing my art,
Yes.
So it was an interesting shift because, I adore actors. I think they're brilliant. I love watching fine acting. But I found that eventually I was like, no, I'm a performer, but not that's my passion.
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
That was a recent discovery for me to realize that I love being myself. It's hard enough being myself, so now having to go and try to be somebody else seems impossible.
Yeah, I remember getting out of graduate school, which I loved. I loved this little group of actors that I was with. And I got out within months and I thought, I don't think I'm going to act much more. I really was like, I think I might, I directed but just this feeling of it gave me confidence, it gave me presence, it gave me a creative community. I learned a lot of things. I would never give it up, but It wasn't about the acting for me ultimately, interestingly.
That's funny. I'm still thinking about, you're like, oh, that's such a Leo question.
It is.
Now I'm wondering if this is a Leo question. Well, no, you wrote this one. The next thing you wrote was, meeting Sofia Diaz, my teacher, even today, blasted me open, embodiment of fierce love.
Yeah, guess what, Lauren? It is a Leo question.
How can it be? You wrote it down.
No. But it's not a Leo question. It's Leo because Sophia is a Leo, and Leo rules the heart. And so this was one of those moments where Yeah, it changed my life. Yes. She's a yoga teacher. Boulder, Colorado, living in Boulder, Colorado. Dear friend of mine says, you have to come and check this woman out, And just walking into the space and feeling this presence. I mean, I've had this happen several times in my life where I meet somebody and I just think, the energy of this person, the vibrancy of this person, the courage of this person, the light of this person is going to lift me to a greater place,
Right.
And she was just I'd never moved my body like that, but she always talked about yoga as really, that real yoga is just us working at our own physical edge. It's not about being this perfect position. It's really about working at our own physical edge so that love and beauty and strength and power can pour through, not about looking pretty and wearing nice yoga pants, right? So she's always having rants about what real yoga is. But I guess I will there was this one moment after I'd been going to her class for a while, and the moment she just, I don't know how to explain it, but she was looking out at us. There was a woman that I was aware in the class that was actually had cancer and was really struggling with it. And I think Sophia was feeling her pain and was like looking out to us. And she started crying, but not in she started crying in the most fierce, gorgeous way. And she said, "I will gladly eat your troubles."
Wow.
And I mean, I can't even explain it. And we all just simultaneously, like 25 women went, and it was just this great release and relief and surrender to that kind of compassion and that kind of sensitivity. And I mean, there's so many stories about Sophia, but she's always called me on my stuff, and she's always taken me to the next level, and she's loved me and loved others more than most can love.
Wow. Is she still out in Boulder?
She is. Yeah, she is. And I get to actually spend time with her like once a year because she comes to a conference that my father puts on, and I really love being with her. And every year we grow more together, and
it's wonderful when you meet people like that.
Yeah.
Somebody that's more than just a friend, more than just an acquaintance.
Yeah. It feels like an age-old connection. It feels like if she never taught me anything again in my life, I would still consider her my teacher. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
And when I think of her, like, she often would talk about the plane of the heart. Plane, the plane of the heart. And she would talk about like this energy of the heart just out in all directions, and how the strength of that and what we can do by actually recognizing the power of our hearts. And I just find it so beautiful and inspiring to think about loving that fiercely.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. She said that she actually, there was some beautiful quote by a Tibetan that said that, the plane of a woman's heart is a great field on which a horse can run, or something gorgeous. I mean, it was something about this power, and I was like, "Yum! Yes, please, more of that."
And the plane of a man's heart.
I would say it's also one that on one which a horse can run. we were talking about women at the time, but.
Right. It's funny though, as you're talking about these things, my mother is a licensed clinical social worker, adoption specialist, and we've had an interesting relationship because to me she's just my mom that gets mad if I don't do the dishes or fold the laundry or will track me down. But to everyone else, she was this amazing person, and she is to me. It's different when you're a child living with your mom. It's your mom.
Yeah.
But we had a conversation recently where she was telling me about the differences between how women are and how men are. And this was a new thing. And I really enjoyed her sharing that with me, that it's not something I've really ever thought about or processed or looked into. But when it comes to good relationships, that's vital. And so I found that to be beautiful and bold and wonderful.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time studying amongst women and talking a lot about the difference between what I would say is like the divine masculine energy and the divine feminine energy. And the reason why I say divine is that, of course, the masculine and feminine can exist in both of us. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful polarity that is worthy of deep exploration within ourselves and with one another. And
do you think, let me see, how do I word this? Do you think it's purposeful that there's men and women?
Let's how to answer that. I think that there's polarities in everything, and I think what we're all here to do is figure out how to come together, how to unify, know, and in the most beautiful way. And so,
I don't know. It was a hard question to ask. Yeah, it was a hard question to ask, but it does make me think there's definitely differences, although there's some overcross between the two. But
I like to think of us all as ultimately souls who have chosen a physical, who've chosen in any carnation, masculine or feminine, and having many opportunities to experience both.
Right. I would imagine, though, if a soul is going to go into the body of a man, there's a room where somebody's sitting down with this soul saying, okay, here we go. And there's a checklist because guys have to over-prepare.
Well, definitely, I would say the divine masculine is very linear, maybe it's the plane of the mind, right?
Right.
And yeah. I
Great.
Get you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me jump to this one. You said that you had a very scary plane trip off the coast of Australia. My warrior friend and I faced the possibility of a crash.
Yeah. Well, this is also linked to Sophia in an interesting way because we'd just flown to Australia. I brought my best friend to Australia, and we'd just spent like 2 weeks with Sophia in Australia. And this was, I think, in 2002. And it was in Byron Bay. I don't know if you've ever been. I mean, Byron Bay is just this stunning place in Australia. And we spent most of the time, like, I wish you could see me, but I was like, you'd standing with our arms outstretched and our heart open, and we would just stand on the beach and breathe and, do gorgeous yoga. And it was a heart blowing open experience.
Right.
And then we went to Flinders Island to visit some dear friends of ours, this little island that had 600 people on it. And it was an incredible island. But that was where this occurred. So we were flying from Melbourne after this retreat to Flinders Island, and we were in this incredible space. And my dear friend Elizabeth had just been through this breakup, and she'd gone through this profound transformation at the retreat. We were both feeling exhausted and exhilarated. We got on this plane. We're flying across the ocean. There's only us. I think maybe it was just us. It was just us. It was a tiny plane and the pilot. And there was a little curtain where you could actually see the pilot. Like, it was not a door,
Right.
It was a curtain.
Okay.
And we're about 15 minutes out from Flinders, and I start seeing him like yank this, like almost like it looked like a throttle, and yank it over and over again. And I was like looking at him, and he kept on pulling it. And then he reached into like what was the equivalent of a glove compartment in a plane,
Right.
and pulled out the manual. and I looked at Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is fierce. Elizabeth's this gorgeous, fierce Scorpio.
Right.
Scorpios are the warriors. And she just looked at me, and she would not let go of my gaze. And she just kept on nodding her head and looking at me. And it was this profound moment because she was like, do you know what? If we die here, we love each other fiercely. We've had an amazing experience. Things are all right in our world. There was like this feeling of like, it is okay. And I could feel her energy of total undying love and support. And it was just like, I just kept on looking at her. And as it turned out, he's turned around, and I finally said, what is going on? And he said, well, we're going to turn around. We're going to fly back across the ocean to Melbourne. He still didn't say anything.
Right.
So there was still more tension. But he eventually said, look, it's a switch that we don't know whether the wheels are going down or not on the plane. We don't know whether they're going down. And obviously we can't land if they're not going
Right.
down. So we've got to fly back to Melbourne and see if the wheels are going down or if it's an electrical problem. So we flew back, and it was this, it was a good 40 minutes of like saying, okay, this might be it. And somehow there was this profound release and profound surrender that happened where, yes, I was nervous and yes, I, wanted to weep, but I was also like somehow okay and somehow like in this space of love and openness. And we flew back over the Melbourne airport. They said, in fact, yes, the wheels are coming down. Because, by the way, Flinders Airport had nobody to tell us whether the wheels were coming down, right? We were just going to land on this tiny strip. So we flew back. They said the wheels are coming down. We landed. I crawled off the plane, touched the ground, wept, called my husband. I almost died, And, but it was a profound moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that was do you see something like that as a test from the universe, or is it's just a thing?
I don't know if I see it as deliberate or a test. I see it as this like, and what about this? I see it as a kind of opportunity. I see it as like, how did those 2 weeks sit in you? Do you know? I mean, I guess you could say it as a test, but I don't think it was sent directly to, but it was just this opportunity for me to feel into how much I had opened and relaxed into myself and into what I really believe, what I don't know. It had so much to do with love for me. It had so much to do with love. So, yeah.
Wow. Do you feel like you approach death in the same way now, or do you think it was that instant in time and that that your ultimate demise, you perceive it a different way?
I think I perceive it a different way, and I think it was a moment that changed my life. And David White is a poet and beautiful. He also has written a bunch of prose, but he always talks about apprenticing to death, like your apprenticeship to death. And he specifically talks about like, look, when you're out over 35, you start to think about the end as much as the beginning. And I think it's quite beautiful. We pay so much attention to birth and the beautiful da-da-da. And we go like, oh, let's go die behind that closed door.
Right.
Do you know? But I think more and more, at least in spiritual communities and philosophies, it's like, let's pay attention to this exit as well. And let's end as open as you can possibly end, instead of like, I'm terrified and I don't want to let go. It's just like, let's breathe into it and let go.
Right.
And
that's why it's fascinating in New Orleans, how they celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. And my friend Elizabeth, who was on the plane with me, who's a Scorpio, her favorite day is the Day of the Dead, November 2nd. She loves celebrating that. It's fascinating. And I think we just have to come to, it's a, as far as I'm concerned, death is a release into another life, into a greater light. Right. So
right.
Yes, I would say it did change. It did change how I
It's going back into that waiting room to find out if you're, what you're going to become the next life.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to get into retreats.
Yeah.
You say discovering personal retreats as a mother of young children, started to take time alone, changed everything, the power of solitude, removing myself from the chaos of every day. So these aren't retreats with other people. You're specifically, in this case, talking about retreats
personal
of
retreats.
one.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do lead retreats of big group of women, but this was this discovery when, let's see, I think Kate, I have a daughter and a son, and I think it was when my son, my younger son, was like about 3 years old. So I think I started this about 5 or 6 years ago, and I found myself in this place of mother overwhelm and guilt, and I have to be there for my children, and I can never leave. I mean, throughout motherhood, I've actually been one of those people that's more like, I've got to go out and, keep my life, my artistic life and my friendship life alive too.
Right.
So that's always been important to me. But there was this moment where I said, oh my gosh, I can't even hear myself anymore. And so my husband was like, why don't you just take a night away? So I I started to look at in Ojai, one of my favorite places in the world, just an hour and a half out of Los Angeles, right? And I started to look up different places where I might go for a night. And I ended up going to Pepper Tree Retreat, which is Krishnamurti, who's a spiritual leader, who has since died, but it was his little farmhouse, and he used to have all these different artists come and stay with him and study with him. Like, so every room is named after John Lennon, the John Lennon room, the Stravinsky suite, the Bohm room, the Annie Besant room. So it's, that's kind of fun in itself. And I went, and I remember getting there and crying for the first hour, sleeping for the second hour, and then getting up and going having a latte. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh my God, it's just me. It's just me. And, some people that spend a lot of time alone just look at me and go, what are you? You're crazy. But I didn't spend any time alone, So anyway, I ended up writing some of my first poems in a long time. And I ended up just really resting and restoring. But, that was one night. And when I finished that one night, I was like, oh my God, that is not enough. I was like, that is not enough. So I started every 4 months or so to go off by myself and stay for 2 nights, 3 nights, whatever. And at first I would only I would work furiously and try to use that time as best I could. Mm-hmm. And then I segued into, no, this time is actually restorative time. So do exactly what you want to do. And if it organically turns into writing poetry, or if it organically turns into, writing a new blog piece or whatever it is, do it. But otherwise, just be quiet and listen. And I love being alone.
It's a scary thing. At least to myself, it's a scary idea. However, when my wife was away last weekend for 3 days, I finally said, you know what? I'm fine with it. I wasn't fighting the idea of, oh my gosh, if I'm by myself, then I'm alone.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? This feels right.
Yeah.
And that's what was different and comforting.
Yeah. I mean, my husband knows now that and he's wonderful, he will take care, he's just hands-on dad extraordinaire. And so he knows that if I go away for 2 nights, if I go away for 3 nights, when I come back, I am like, hello. I just feel so radically different, and I feel so replenished. And truly, I don't speak. I might go order a tea, but other than that, I'm just quiet. And I try. There's so many women, that are so many mothers and friends of mine that won't do it. They won't do that for themselves, or they don't get it, or they feel like they can't. I couldn't possibly leave my child. I couldn't possibly, with whatever it is. They have all these reasons, but we're just getting so depleted.
Right.
I see a lot of people that feel very burdened and heavy, and I'm speaking about mothers right now, but just oh my gosh, the to-do list never stops, right? But I'm just saying, take 2 days, just go be with yourself. And it's terrifying, I think.
Right. I think it's scary for somebody, and probably scary for somebody who's got somebody else who they wonder, well, what are they going to say? What if they say no?
Yeah.
What's that feeling of my world's going to crash around me if I don't keep the wheels running and keep the plate spinning?
Yeah.
And it's that's the classic steps to burnout. And you just do sometimes. I do it too. You just need to step back and trust that the wheels aren't going to roll off the car. And the kids won't kill each other. And
right. And it gives us everyone an opportunity to just have a different experience of themselves. And when my husband's with the kids, it's different than when we're all with the kids, or when I'm just with the kids, and they have different experiences. And so they're not missing me. They're just having a lovely, he always says they missed you just enough, or just the right amount, right? Which is great. But I am one of those people that inspiration has to come out of the silence, and it requires some listening, and poetry for sure, has to come out of the silence for me.
I'm shaking my head because you're right. What I wanted to do was just take a breath to say, you're right. It's a beautiful thing to take a breath, to stop and listen.
Yeah.
To turn off things that don't serve your needs.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go get ice cream. Okay.
For me, it's a vanilla latte.
Oh, is that your thing?
Oh yeah, I'm like dream of the hour every day when I'm like, I gotta go have my vanilla latte and write some poetry.
It seems like caffeine is counterproductive.
It's true. I should probably give it up.
You also talk about your first Radiant Life retreat. Tiny group, sheer determination to birth this new offering. So this is something that you decided to lead yourself.
Yes. So, it's interesting how many roads lead back to Sophia, but, I would go to many retreats with Sophia and I would sit there and think, I love this. I want to do something like this. And her medium was yoga, and I knew that wouldn't be my medium, but I was like, I want to gather women. And, I just knew it sitting in the circles. I just felt it in every, fiber of my being. And so in 2009, and it's interesting, my son was 9 months old, which is like, I was very prolific during my pregnancies. I was like, I want to create, So he was 9 months old, and I just said, I want to gather some women for some time away in a beautiful place. And I wanted have a combination of astrology, poetry, movement, writing. And I called them Radiant Life Retreats because, as a Leo rising, the rising sign in our chart is what we really want to cultivate and what we want to grow in ourselves. And for me, it's Leo. So it's this energy of the radiance of the heart. And I want to give people experiences of their own radiance. So I started by enrolling, it takes everything to enroll, right? Your personal emails, personal invitations,
right.
Finding ways to make it financially viable. And I somehow, thank goodness, scraped together like 6 people, I think, that wanted to come with me to Mount Madonna, which was up north in California, and spend 3 days with me. I think it was over Halloween, no less. Like I somehow managed to, I think it was over Halloween, yeah. And I was terrified and exhilarated and grateful and way over planned. I've taught for many, many years. First, I taught acting. I've taught many, many things, and I've always been a insane over planner. My, the syllabus, every down to the last minute, right? And so everything was planned down to the last minute, and took it very seriously. And it was a great experience. It was a tiny little group, but it was a great experience. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm on to something. This is what I want to do. And actually it was then our dear friend, Christine Aller, a couple of years later, I did another one up in Mount Madonna that got bigger. And then, then I decided I wanted to do it in Ojai, and Christine Aller helped me really enroll the big retreat that's launched Ojai. And she came to that first one as well, which was hilarious because at first she was like, no way, I'm not coming to it. What, astrology retreat? That has nothing to do with me, So, but we did this beautiful trade. And so now I've been doing retreats at Mount Madonna in Villa Ojai since 2011. And I do 2 a year, and I've done some elsewhere. But they're really gorgeous gatherings of usually about 20 women. And we spend about 4 nights together, and we dive deep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you find that the women are coming in really clinging to whatever your syllabus plan is? Or are you finding that they just want to live and breathe and are happy to be flexible in their mind?
Yeah. Well, I should say, I started out my life with many syllabi and have since learned that I still like to plan, but I always throw it all away. I still like to plan, but I'll start an exercise and then it's clear that what's in the room needs a different kind of attention, right? So I do love structure, and I do love timeliness and paying attention to time and things like that. But I've learned so much about spontaneity and play and joy and what's happening and how do we need to address what's happening? So no, the people coming are like, let me just have a good time. They don't care. They even resent me having them be on time. But no, they come because they want a deeper connection with themselves, with one another. They want to feel lighter. They want to feel like they're giving their gift more in the world. And the gorgeous thing about these retreats is they really have translated to everyday life. And so there's this community of women now after these years that are actually fundamentally connected even outside of these retreats. And there's women in Australia, there's women, across the United States that stay deeply and lovingly in touch with one another and really support each other.
That's wonderful.
So, it feels like part of my huge life's work.
Heidi, thank you very much for sharing your story. I feel like I'm on cloud 9. Like this was the best evening ever.
I had such a good time. Thank you so much for asking such great questions, and really had a good time with you.
Well, they were Leo questions.
There we go.
A little Leo.
Well, you're a Leo and I'm Leo rising, so you're actually here to teach me about Leo, my friend.
My wife is a Leo as well.
You are too. See, I'm in the perfect place. We're all, Leo. You must have Leo somewhere. Alan,
It would be by birth.
You a Leo too?
Yeah, I'm a Leo. Yeah.
You're kidding me.
I know.
Well, I do always am amazed. When I was a kid, I knew one guy who was a Leo, one boy as a Leo in elementary school. But in my adult life, I keep running across so many Leos.
Oh my gosh.
Well, what I always say is our parents had cold winters.
Well, that is awesome. You guys are all lions and lionesses and leaders and fiery ones.
Fiery, yes.
And we never celebrated our birthdays at school.
No.
That's
Although
true.
now it seems like a lot of schools are in session. I think we need to do like a Jimmy Kimmel episode where he lets us go into an elementary school to celebrate our birthdays.
That would be awesome.
All right, I'm going to work on that.
Okay,
But
yes.
anyway, Heidi, thank you.
Thank you.
My thanks as always to my co-host Alan Ng and to this episode's guest, Heidi Rose Robbins. You can follow her at HeidiRose.com. That's HeidiRose.com. On Twitter and Instagram, you can find her at Heidi Rose 4. That's Heidi Rose and the number 4. Music by My Monthly Date. You can find them at facebook.com/mymonthly-date. Subscribe to 5 Things That Change Your Life on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review while you're there. We'd really appreciate it. You can also listen and download our show on Google Play, Stitcher, Amazon Alexa, or your favorite podcast service. You can follow us online at 5thingspodcast.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/5thingspodcast, that's FIVE, or on Twitter at 5thingspod. That's FIVEPOD. For 5 Things That Changed Your Life, I'm Lauren Kling.